Hello and welcome to your English paper piecing tutorial with me, Kate, from Curious Octopus. Curious Octopus is a monthly craft subscription box where we explore a different creative craft every month. We send out everything you need in your box and then teach the project together during a live online craft night. This video is an accompanying tutorial to our English paper piecing craft night. But if you've discovered this video separately and would like to join us for future projects, you can find us over at curiousoctopus.art. In this tutorial, I'm going to take you through the basics of how to create your hexagon shapes, how to sew them together, and one way of attaching them to a backing to create a beautiful wadded table mat. Okay, so we're going to start by preparing our hexagons. Your fabric hexagons have already been cut for you, which saves a lot of time and makes this part really nice and relaxing. Take one of your fabric pieces and lay it face down on the table, then place one of your paper hexagon templates in the center. Now these little paper pieces are what give English paper piecing its shape and structure. Traditionally, people would tack the fabric around the paper using a few stitches, usually just catching each corner to hold everything in place. You can absolutely still do it that way if you prefer. Personally, I find gluing much quicker and easier, especially for beginners, so that's the method we'll be using today. You only need the tiniest amount of glue here. Really, less is more. You want enough to hold the fabric in place, but not so much that the paper becomes heavily stuck down. We are going to remove this later. Try to avoid covering the whole edge in glue. Leaving little sections with less glue actually helps later on when we remove the paper pieces once everything has been sewn together. So fold one edge over at a time, add a tiny dab of glue and gently press it down. Then continue working your way around the hexagon until all the edges are neatly folded over and secured. Don't worry if they're not absolutely perfect. Once they're stitched together, those tiny imperfections completely disappear, and that handmade look is part of what makes English paper piecing so lovely. Once you've glued your hexagons, you can place them underneath a heavy book for a little while just to help flatten them down while the glue dries. It just makes them a little bit neater and easier to work with. Now we're going to start sewing the hexagons together. You can lay your hexagons out to see where you'd like them positioned. The needles included in your kit are perfect for this because they're very fine and sharp, which helps keep the stitches small and neat. However, I completely understand that the eyes are absolutely tiny and can be quite fiddly to thread. Needle threaders are almost useless with these ones, so I have included another needle with a slightly larger eye. If you'd rather use that one, that is completely fine, but if you can manage with the smaller needle, I would recommend it for this project. Take two hexagons and place them right sides together so the pattern sides are facing each other. Then use the little clips provided to hold the edge together while you sew. We're only sewing along one edge at a time, and the stitches for English paper piecing need to be really tiny. The aim is that we're going to catch just the fabric and not sewing through the paper inside. So we're literally picking up the smallest little bit of fabric with each stitch. Now the stitch we're using is called a whip stitch. So we're bringing the needle from the back through both layers of fabric, pulling the thread through and then going back in again from the same side. So the thread wraps over the edge each time. You're aiming for roughly 16 to 20 stitches along each edge, so they need to sit fairly close together. Try not to pull the thread too tightly because that can distort the shape, but you do want each stitch to feel secure. And honestly, after a few edges, your hands just sort of learn the rhythm of it. It becomes very repetitive in the nicest possible way. Once you're done, you can open up the two hexagons, add another hexagon, and continue again. From here, you're simply going to continue joining your hexagons together in exactly the same way. Place two edges together with the right sides facing in, line them up carefully, clip them together and sew along the edge using your whip stitch. As your piece starts getting larger, it can feel a little bit more awkward to hold because you'll have extra hexagons hanging off in different directions. Don't worry about that at all. You'll find yourself folding pieces around as you work, and that is completely normal. Remember, it's only the paper templates inside that are bending and folding slightly. The fabric itself will flatten back out perfectly once the piece is open up again. So just keep building it section by section, one seam at a time until you've created a larger patchwork piece. You can keep your edges more rounded, create straighter edges, make it into a flower shape, a runner, a table mat, or just keep adding to it over time. There really isn't a right or wrong stopping point with English paper piecing. For this project though, we are going to be making the table mat. If you did buy a Curious Octopus kit, you've got extra backing fabric included, so if you want to keep growing your project beyond the original design, you absolutely can. You could eventually turn this into a cushion cover, a bag panel, or even a full quilt if you completely fall down the English paper piecing rabbit hole. Once your patchwork piece is finished, turn it over so you can see the back. Now we're going to start removing the paper pieces. Start from the centre and remove the internal papers first. Leave the outer edge pieces in place for now because they're helping to hold the shape around the outside. To remove each paper, gently lift the fabric away from the card and ease the paper out. Be careful here because you don't want to pull too hard and accidentally loosen any of your stitches. Once all the inside papers have been removed, we can start working around the outer edge. Take out one paper piece at a time, then add a tiny bit of glue and fold those fabric edges back into place. You should still be able to see the crease from where the paper was, so use that as your guide. Add the tiniest amount of glue just to hold those folded edges down and keep the shape nice and neat. Then keep working your way around the outside, removing one paper at a time, folding the fabric back over and gluing it lightly into place. By the end, your paper pieces will all be removed, but your hexagon shape should still be held neatly together. Now it's time to attach your English paper piecing onto the backing fabric. Layer your backing fabric out flat, then position your finished piece wherever you'd like it to sit. Take a little time here to make sure you're happy with the placement before pinning it down. Use the butterfly pins included in your kit to hold everything securely in place while you sew. To attach it, we're going to use a small running stitch all the way around the outside edge of the shape. Just like with the whip stitch earlier, the aim here is for the stitches to be as tiny and neat as possible. We want them sitting right along the edge of the English paper piecing so that the whole piece feels secure, but the stitches don't become too visible from the front. So keep taking small, even stitches all the way around the shape until the whole piece is attached down onto the backing fabric. As you work, keep checking the backing fabric underneath. You want to make sure the English paper piecing is still sitting straight and flat and that the tension of the fabric underneath matches the tension on the top. If the backing fabric starts pulling or puckering, just gently smooth it back out before continuing. Once it's fully stitched down, your piece should feel nicely secured and properly attached to the backing fabric, and the whole thing should feel nice and flat. Now we're going to start turning this into our finished padded mat. At this stage, we're basically creating a little fabric sandwich, or almost like a bag shape, because we're going to sew it together and then turn it the right way out afterwards. Take your backing fabric and place it face down on the top of your English paper piecing piece, so the right sides or the outer sides of the fabric should be facing each other on the inside. Then place your wadding on top. The wadding is what is going to give the finished piece its softness, structure and padded shape. So this is the point where you want to decide the final outline of your project. Use the wadding as your guide shape. If you want to trim it down slightly, straighten the edges, round the corners or adjust the final shape at all, now is the time to do that. So from bottom to top, you should now have your English paper piecing piece, your backing fabric face down on top of that, and then your wadding sitting on the very top. Once everything is lined up, pin all three layers together so nothing shifts while you sew. Now, an important point here, we are not sewing through the wadding yet. The wadding is only acting as a shape guide at this stage. We're going to sew around 3 edges only, leaving one section open so we can turn the whole piece the right way out afterwards. Using a small running stitch, sew around the outer edges following the shape of the wadding, but stitching only through the front and backing fabric layers underneath. So at the moment, all we're really doing is attaching the original English paper piecing section to the backing fabric that will become the underside of the finished mat. Obviously, you've always got to be joined by your cat. Once you've sewn around the 3 outer edges, you can remove your pins and carefully take the wadding back out for a moment. Now turn the whole piece the right way out through the opening you left. You should now have all of your seams hidden neatly on the inside. Once it's turned out properly, place the wadding back inside the fabric layer, almost like putting a cushion back into a cushion cover. Take a little bit of time here to smooth everything out and make sure the wadding is sitting properly inside the shape. You want it pushed right into the edges and corners so the finished piece sits nice and evenly. Now we can close the final open edge. Fold the raw fabric edges inward so they tuck neatly inside, matching the sewn edges around the rest of the piece. Then use your pins to hold everything securely in place before stitching. To close this edge, we're going to use another whip stitch, working all the way along the opening with small, neat stitches to secure it shut. Before you start sewing, just double check that the wadding is sitting where you want it and hasn't folded or shifted inside. Then continue stitching along the final edge until the whole piece is fully closed and secured. Lastly, we're just going to add a few small anchor stitches to keep the wadding securely in place inside the finished piece. Start by adding a tiny stitch in each corner. This helps stop the wadding from shifting or bunching up over time. Then choose a few points across the English paper piecing itself, roughly 4 places where 3 hexagons meet together. Those joining points are ideal because the stitches blend into the seams and become almost invisible from the front. Take a small stitch through all the layers and secure it neatly underneath. You only need a few of these, just enough to hold everything together and keep the finished mat sitting flat and padded nicely. And that completes your English paper piecing tutorial. If you'd like to join Curious Octopus next month, head on over to curiousoctopus.art. We learn a new craft every month and we'd love to have you join us. And don't forget to give us a follow at curiousoctopus.art.